Let's talk about the White House Conference on Nutrition. Now, this is the first White House Conference on Nutrition in over 53 years. Pretty dramatic. And the goals are laudable: to eliminate hunger, right? To talk about nutrition and health, to decrease the impact that nutrition has on chronic diseases. These are fantastic goals. Great to have the government talking about it. But what about the details? How are they going to do it? What actually happened at the conference? Who was there? What was the energy like?
What concerns me is that the solutions, by and large, are either vegan, which is more extreme, kind of low-fat, plant-based, and that's mainly coming out of the private sector, or from the government, more of the same, right? So let's just take the government first. Biden pronounced, like the 24 hours before the conference, and this was consistent with the extreme secrecy with which the conference was planned. There was almost no information on the agenda until the night before. The speakers were released without any bios or links. I mean, I still can't tell you really anything about the people who spoke at the conference. And this 44-page plan was released by Biden 24 hours in advance, and it includes a number of initiatives that are about more nutrition education, more reimbursement for nutrition education. It all sounds great, right? More funding for school meals for kids so that they do not go hungry. Nutrition counseling for people who are getting Medicaid or Medicare programs, for people who are poor or the elderly. All of that sounds fantastic, except that all of that will be based on the U.S. Dietary Guidelines for Americans. It's all predicated on that, like, self-evidently failed policy, right? And when I say that, I don't say that lightly. It's just that obesity in America was under 14% in 1980 when the dietary guidelines were launched. Now it's at 43% or higher. And so, whatever you say about the guidelines, and people have followed them pretty well, according to the best available government data, they just haven't succeeded in preventing these terrible diseases. So more of the same seems, unwarranted, or at least like a non-reflective, non-analytic way of going about this. So that is upsetting. And some of the government proposals include sort of doubling down even more. So there's a proposal that was released to enforce lower sodium standards in school lunches. Well, is there any data that lowering sodium for children will result in any benefit, much less to say will not cause harm? This is the amount of data on them.
Yeah.
So,
well, what it will do is make them probably not like the taste of the food and not eat it. That's the one thing I can think would happen. And you're right. No proven benefit to low sodium diets in kids. So that's frustrating.
And in adult populations, excessive lowering of sodium has been shown to increase or to be associated with increased risk, and in populations, especially non-hypertensive populations. So that suggests that there could be some harm. So that's a non-evidence-based recommendation. There was, in addition, a proposal unveiled on this at the sort of the moment of the White House conference by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, saying we want a label to put the healthy word on the front of food packages, updated to include low sodium, low saturated fat, and I think that was supposed to be lower in sugar, but they're kind of edging away from what would arguably be like the one most important thing, and actually evidence-based thing they could do, which is to lower sugar. So, keeping saturated fat low is also a non-evidence-based solution. So that's the government side, which you might think, there's so little that we really know about this conference, but it's possible that that's like relatively minor. And a number of these proposals depend upon congressional passage, which is, to have the Congress actually legislate them. That is unlikely to happen before the midterm elections. So it's unlikely to happen anytime soon. These are kind of like a wish list, really, that may or may not happen. Mm-hmm. On the other side, you have the private sector, or some is local governments, but mainly private sector investment. $8 billion have been pledged by all kinds of actors. I looked into some of these. So there's $8 billion pledged by over 100 private businesses, local governments, and philanthropies. For instance, something called S2G Ventures and Food Systems for the Future announced a new coalition that would invest $2.5 billion in a new fund dedicated to ending hunger and fixing our health. So I looked into some of those, who's participating in this. They have a coalition partner, Rich Products Ventures. What are they doing? They're making fake egg proteins. The Future Systems for the Food is dedicated to insect proteins. That's their main investment.
Yeah.
They have another partner that makes fake seafood. I mean, so these are all companies that are devoted to, sustainability. They want to make a better planet, better for health, but it's all about really creating these highly processed food. That's where the profit margin is. That would replace largely animal proteins and, create new markets for new foods. And that's, it was always my suspicion that was what was going into the conference, were a bunch of investors who are interested in creating new markets. I mean, this is what the food industry is about, which is creating new markets for people, not just new foods, but new ways of treating disease through apps and programs. I was pretty aware that the massive corporate interests behind this conference and funding it all the way up were not on stage. I don't know. There was to me a pretty big disconnect between what was staged and what was really going on behind the scenes. You really just don't know what kind of partnerships are happening behind the scenes. Let me give you two other examples. One is that $250 million was pledged by the Rockefeller Foundation and the American Heart Association and Kroger's grocery chain for an initiative called Food is Medicine. That is also being proposed to be funded as a pilot program for next year. It's actually in the congressional appropriation for next year, and we don't know if it'll be passed. But that's like this. So you've got philanthropy, American Heart Association, extremely close to the government. And another example is $22 million was pledged by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. That group was originally named the Christian College of Lifestyle Medicine. That is a group that is a Seventh-day Adventist church group. They believe in a nuts, seeds, basically a vegan diet, as a matter of faith. So that is their religious faith and belief. They have pledged $22 million to educate healthcare practitioners on their diet. And that has been accepted by the government, this faith-based initiative, as part of this Food is Medicine. It's just part of these really conflicting, conflated, and competing agendas coming from very different motives and backgrounds.